let's look at kind of the framework for how I look at resumes. I actually, this is really funny. I went and looked for my resume because I haven't I haven't needed to look at it since I came to Massive like 7 years ago. So yeah, I realized I don't need that. And so I haven't updated it. I looked for it and couldn't find it. So I guess I have to make a new one. How hilarious is that? Yeah, so I essentially I probably need an overhaul. So let's look at resumes in general. So YouTube's Maru. Oh man, chat's spicy today. Well, welcome to the pre-show. Let's look at resumes. So of course you should have your name on it, right? You should have all of your contact info. I would be a little hesitant to have it on a site where it's easy to download, like from bot side. So you got to be careful about emails being in there. I would suggest maybe having an email that's related to your professional self versus like your Hotmail from like when you were 5. Although I assume at this point, a lot of people in chat when they were 5, Hotmail was already not a thing. Hot mess, I guess. It's not really used, right? It's all Gmail these days. So yeah, I suggest putting, you have Hotmail. I mean, I have a Hotmail too, man. I just haven't opened it in ages. But yeah, so you've got your contact info and if you're in a job currently, game industry or not, I would suggest putting it up there just so like right off of the bat, they see what you're up to or who you are. And following that up is you want an introduction to yourself, which I would say is like 1 to 2 paragraphs. Also, because it's a pre-show, I'll just be answering questions in chat as they come up. I have a live account as well. So if you have questions about whatever we're talking about at this very moment, just poke me. Hey Sandy, how you doing? Yeah, so I like an intro because I like to see like who the person is. I guess for me personally, I like to know a little bit about the person. The introduction, yes, that's another thing I should put on the side here. This will be good for the video. The introduction should be in here if they're not asking for a 1-pager. You could still, or sorry, not a 1-pager, but like a what's the word for it? A cover letter. So if there's no cover letter required, I would still take the opportunity to say a little bit about yourself. Is a cover letter actually needed? I think a cover letter of let's say 3 to 4 paragraphs, maybe. That's a lot. Like maybe 3 paragraphs is fine. 1 to 2 paragraphs in an introduction in your resume will back you up. It's kind of like, where do you put your portfolio link, right? You probably should put it at the top here near your name. Contact info, your portfolio link should be up here. If there's a cover letter made, the cover letter should basically just be your resume really pared down and having the same information, your name at the top, contact info, all that stuff. That way, if they like you from the cover letter, they can actually click on your portfolio directly from the cover letter. Yeah, so that's, yes. Yonners. Yonners, that's an amazing name, username. So you have to remember that recruiters are going to be going through, I mean, if it's a really active recruiter, we're talking, I don't know, 30 to 50 reviews in a day of just going through documentation and when I say documentation, I mean resumes, like just tons of resumes, right? And just kind of trying to look for key things that either are a yes or a no to them. Like, ooh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, they don't have any of this. Okay. And then they put that in the other, like the denied pile. I think in real good studios where usually where the recruiters are in-house. I think the idea is to use a third-party website that allows you to not only have the recruiters look at the portfolio and the CV or resume, but also the people that are the team that's asking for the position, right? So if I'm looking for an environment artist, I would hope that an environment artist doesn't get denied by a recruiter before I was able to see the portfolio. You know what I mean? So while it's having respect for recruiters' time, it makes it easy, especially if I'm getting links and they just sent me the cover letters for whatever reason, if that was a mistake or whatnot, or if I'm looking at a website that's also being looked at by recruiters from my team. It's like, you know what I mean? You have all of the info everywhere. That being said, it still needs to have like a nice reading format. I don't really like, I mean, I think you could, can we just do this? You could do this, right? You could have you can have who you are here. I think that makes it more personal, which is really cool. We're gonna color this as well. And that makes it more like, this is a person, you know what I mean? You're not just looking at another resume. So that can give you a little bit of an up and up, if you want to call it that. For a resume, so J. Cruz, for a resume as layout, should you be more plain easy to read or some sort of design? I would skip design altogether. The most design you should have is maybe like if you have something around your photo, or like a black and white design of the frame up top, because like it can be really flowery and cool looking and detailed, but that's all that's doing is distracting, I guess, at least myself. It distracts me from looking at the information that's here, right? So we kind of covered cover letters and a little bit of an introduction of yourself. Usually that introduction is going to be similar to your cover letter. How much does resume gatekeep portfolio check? I would say that it's both. Both are visible. I wouldn't say that a resume gatekeeps a portfolio. Usually you're getting a portfolio link and then you look for the resume from there, right? So like if you're getting Artstation links, you should be showing you should be showing a way to get to your resume really easily from your Artstation. And that's another really, really good reason why you should actually have information about who you are in your Artstation. Because what if that's the first thing they get? Now they're going to go to your About tab, and if you have nothing there, then they have to click again to try and find information. Can a bad cover letter impact an application? I think it can. And I don't think there's such thing as a bad cover letter, but then there's a cover letter that doesn't align with the vision of the team that wants to hire you, right? Like if you're in your cover letter, if you're like super into overtime and you want to work all the time and you don't have any personal hobbies or anything like that, then I'd be like, am I going to have to like manage this person to the point where I'm always telling them that they should go home when they're supposed to go home? So it leaves a taste in your mouth, if that makes sense. It gives you an impression of the person, which is why I really like both of these. When it comes to experience, you had a recruiter suggest making my CV more artistic, but says others say against that. I mean, you want to get really hardcore, you could make a colorful one and a regular one and send both of them, and then say, if you like colorful, that's the name of it. If you like simple, click this one. That could be pretty that's meta right there. Yo, what's up? How you doing? You have been summoned. How's it going? We're talking about resumes. So experience, a lot of people are wondering like, okay, what is my experience if I've never been in games, right? And I highly suggest that even if you have not been in games and you're making your first resume, it's it's really important to still list the things you've been doing. Yeah, so if it's not game art related, keep it interesting. Keep the interesting details to useful soft skills. You could put the CV in your portfolio. You could do that. Make it artsy, 3D portfolio. So like let's say you work at a restaurant and you have your dates from there. If you've been in the restaurant industry for a while and you've just changed locations, it's like from this year to this year, or this month and year to this month and year. But the examples below here that I kind of pinpoint on is they're examples that show soft skills, because soft skills aren't just in game art. They're not just in the games industry, right? It's about how do you what are the job roles you had that showed that you were capable of working with people in a possibly a stressful situation, and you were able to handle communicating with the team. Were you a manager in one of these? Like if you're a manager, I would say 3 points is probably good. If you end up having like, let's scroll back here a little bit. Let's say if you end up having another job, right? And these are completely different. Maybe it was only one location, and then these ones are like, we're going in deep. Farmer. Let's say accountant. Okay. These will have very different examples of like how you can show the not only the diversity of what you were doing, but it gives you different soft skill examples or team skills that you can show that that really highlight your ability to work with a team. Let's see what's being said in here. Yeah, putting your no game industry experience is good because it shows you're an adult. You are adult enough to do what it takes to pay the bills. And like, I mean, once you get into games, I wouldn't even remove this yet, right? But just to highlight this a little bit more, let's just. Oh man, we're gonna need to. You can see how a resume can get kind of long as well. So if it starts getting long, I don't know about you guys in chat. I like to try and have my resume on one page. It doesn't have to be that way, but I like it to be one page. It just feels good. Yeah, so you can see how quickly, even though you don't have industry experience, you have so much soft skills that you can display, right? And like I was saying, leaving this here until you're able to go further into games and really expand this part of your experience in your resume or your CV. I think it looks good. So for education, self-taught is totally okay. I just want to say that because some people are like, is that even, what do I even put on there? And there's some examples in here. This is actually snipped directly from a mentorship where it's like, okay, this education was a 6-month course in person, whereas like this one was a detailed online training titles course or a training course of whatnot. And this one was just online training. How would you point out we were self-learned or self-taught? So self-taught, I mean, these ones are like online stuff you're doing yourself, right? I would argue that online training or mentorships or YouTube, like posting, I wouldn't say necessarily posting the exact YouTube channels you're using, but your ability to be resourceful in finding what you need to find online. Self-made vertex slapper. Oh, that's amazing. You can put that in here. So let's not the vertex slapping, but you know you know what I'm saying. So let's say self-taught. I would basically say I would follow the same format so they understand. Self-taught with a date, right? And let's bring this down here. So let's say it's self-taught. You have a date of when you started learning 3D, and then let's get into examples for it, right? We start going in. Let's detail that stuff out, explaining where and how we got to where we're at. Where's this? What's going on here? I get really picky about things lining up. So some stuff here is stressing me out already. There's like little gaps and stuff everywhere. But yeah, give examples. Say when you started 3D, say the things that you've I mean, I wouldn't go into like insane detail about like, okay, I learned this and this and then I understand this. Like it's stuff like maybe industry standard workflows and processes, right? Because your portfolio should show everything that you self-taught or self-learned, right? And then it's just having these personal courses and online courses that you ended up paying for to try and give yourself a little bit more education outside of just self-taught. That's totally fine. I also would suggest putting mentorships in here. Would you combine experience and education into a single section if you only had self-taught knowledge from places like YouTube and Gumroad, like writing down that I have 2 years experience in Maya and PBR? I mean, I think that might be reading into it a little too much. Like if you're self-taught and I am like, oh, this person's been teaching themselves 3D for like, I don't know, 6 years. And then you look at their portfolio and you see where they're at, right? Those should align. You shouldn't have to go too granular when it comes to, yeah, I'm self-taught in Maya and this is like how long I've been in Maya. I would keep your education and your software skills separated. Because software skills, it's easy to just start listing out all the things that you use. And I'm not really a fan of like your perspective on like how long you've been using a tool measured in your resume, if that makes sense. Yeah, Raggedy, mentorships from things like Mentorship, the Mentor Coalition, or like the Empire mentorships, or any, just straight up any mentorships. Because that's, I would say if you're being mentored by someone who is either in the industry or was in the industry, they have knowledge that you can put in here. You know what I mean? So you're learning from a professional. Oh yeah, Ben, I have not mentioned specific websites, but like Artstation and LinkedIn, make sure that you're setting your profile to like open for finding a new job or freelance or any, tag all those things. Mentorships, Empire mentorships, not sponsored, but you know what I mean? It's like mentorships are valuable in my opinion. And when it comes to like what Ben's talking about in chat, LinkedIn and Artstation, make sure you're saying that you're available for work and that you're if there's any other options, you basically need to set your profile to think about what a recruiter is going to be searching. Does that make sense? So if you're willing to move, if that's a filter that they can set, and you can say that you're not willing to move also, you probably should just put both of them if that's possible, because then they can search both profiles. You know what I mean? People that are looking for people that don't want to move, people that are looking for people that want to move. LinkedIn church, yes, you are. It's a game changer. Yes, you need a LinkedIn. I don't care what anyone says. If someone says you don't need a LinkedIn, I don't understand. Make a LinkedIn. You don't need to be posting on there all the time, but it puts your name on a list that people search that are trying to hire people. That's like saying, I really want to get into games, but I'm not going to put myself on a list for free that people that are trying to hire me for what I want to do will look at. Um, but yeah, and I mean, anything you're posting, treat it like a social media platform in the sense that, like, when you're posting art or you update your resume or you're open for new opportunities, just post that in your stream on your LinkedIn. So uh, software skills. I say how long here. I don't think this is necessarily needed. But if you feel like you need to say it, I think it's okay as well. LinkedIn allowed you to get your job, dude. Awesome. Well, we got 51 minutes and Paul's on. Don't forget to ask your questions in the Discord if you got any for Paul. Polygon, man, he's like, I honestly believe he's at the forefront of the educational industry when it comes to games. No one adds me on LinkedIn. Just add people that you're interested with, Andre. Man, I the thing for me is, like, because I'm not searching, I rarely go to LinkedIn, right? But when I'm searching for work, I would, of course, go to LinkedIn. But yeah, so I would suggest posting your skills, right? Your software skills. It doesn't have to get too granular, but I think when it comes down to it, you should be doing your modeling packages, 3D engine, and then other tools, because it also lets me know either what your LinkedIn. Oh no. It also lets me or whoever is looking at your resume know what is your main software, because yeah, I would put them in order. So if you're a Maya user but you dabble in Blender, or you like Blender as well but you would consider yourself mainly a Maya user, you'd do Maya then Blender, right? And then if you're into Unreal, LinkedIn. Can we? No, we can't. No one will know what that means, man. That's amazing though. I like the idea. Um, so putting your software skills in here is important. And if you're actually, I will get back to this. I will get back to that point. But let's say you've got all your modeling package, 3D engines, and your other tools that you use, and then it down here is hobbies and interests. This can be very short. It can be very short, but I think it's really important to let the person interviewing you or reviewing your resume, let them know that you do other things outside of 3D, or if you really like photography. If I look at your portfolio and you have really good composition, and then I'm like, oh man, they do photography as well, like maybe there's a link to your photography portfolio inside of your 3D portfolio. Maybe they're merged together. The thing is like, it creates this image of who you are to the person who is reviewing your application, right? So things you're interested in and hobbies. The thing I wanted to go into, I've now forgotten. My brain's moving really fast right now. No, I was gonna say that, like, while it's important to have the how long here, I don't really think it's needed, but you can put it. The thing I was really kind of against is a rating system to show your skill level of it, right? Like like this type of stuff. Let's see here. Ugh. If you're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of good at this one, and I'm all right at, and then but my Maya is like all the way at the top, right? That stuff's super weird to me. Um, Scraping public APIs and doing, oh man, yeah, or like beginner, intermediate. It's hard for anyone to have a gauge. I would say you don't need that. Yeah, and viral, that's a very good point. How we should be gauging these is based off of the quality of your portfolio, right? Yeah, and it's the rating is going to be biased as well, right? It's like, who are you rating yourself against? That's a great way to illustrate it. I'm not everyone, and I think progress bars, these kind of progress bar systems, have kind of fallen out of use. But it could also just be being new to making a CV and trying to show your skill level, right? But don't get too caught up on this. I just wanted to make sure that it was highlighted that that it's not necessarily needed to say how long, because your portfolio will show a lot, and let the viewer know, or the reviewer, like where you're at. Hey Melissa, how you doing? Do you guys have any other questions about resumes? There was some chat that was scrolling by and I might have missed something. The LinkedIn comment cracks me up. Let's see here. Any chance you can get a screenshot of this template? Yeah. I'm like, how do I? It's so long. I would argue that this might be too long now, but it was meant to like build a bunch of examples, you know? Let's I don't know how I'm gonna. We will figure this out. I will. You wouldn't list your soft skills. So soft skills. That's a good point. So soft skills, I was assuming if you're just making your resume for games, that your soft skills will probably be in the skills of the jobs you've done. Delete the farmer position and get a bit more space. That's okay. Like that. But no, what I want to do is actually give you guys a high res. I can do this. You can do that, and then I can the upload. There we go. I'll drop it in chat. Upload failed. Maybe not. Is it uploading this time? I think it still failed. We will. This is what I'm saying. I'll figure that out afterwards. I'll put it in the question section. But I would like to, in the DinVersity stuff or the Empire University stuff, get stuff like this into that, and that's on our Notion page. What I wanted to talk about next is portfolios, right? So there's some key. Let me get that text up on the side here, as well as mine. Yeah, so portfolios, right? What I look for is passion and in your craft, what you're building. So if you don't know, I don't know if you've ever looked at a portfolio and you can tell that they're just checking the boxes on making a scene or making a prop. It doesn't look like they're really involved or engaged in what they've created. Like a lot of the details and like the storytelling and stuff, that like if you're not adding that stuff, it feels like you're just not interested. Exile, just to go back to the resume stuff real quick, as an actual photo of myself is fine in my resume was discussed heavily a few days ago. I mean, honestly, I think that is a personal choice. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think it should take up like a fourth of your resume, but yeah. Ooh, can you give an example of an intro section on the resume? What it should look like? The intro section should be introducing who you are and why you got into 3D, or like, you know, when you interview someone in a podcast and you're like, so like, how did you get into 3D? Like, who are you? Where are you from? You're like, oh, I grew up in this town and this is how I got into it, and I love this and this, and like I like doing these things. And that's probably a pretty good example. You wouldn't want to work somewhere you'd be discriminated against, so I think it's actually better to be discriminated prior to being hired, you know? Yeah, I mean, No 4A headshots. That's funny. Our industry is pretty diverse. It does have its issues, and I think while it still has a ways to go, it is getting better. But I mean, you wouldn't, like, if you're getting singled out because of your profile picture, in some countries that's illegal. I don't know how you would prove it or whatnot, but anyways, this goes down a rabbit hole that can't really be explained to an actual end result that'll help us, other than just make your resume how you want to make it when it comes to your personal touch, right? And a profile picture, in my opinion, is that personal touch that makes you a person. And the person on the other side that's reviewing you, if they have a problem with who you are because of your picture, you wouldn't want to work there anyways. So on to portfolios. So I want to see passionate artists, right? I think most people do. And when you look at artwork, you can tell, like I've already said this, but I'll say it again. It's like you can tell when someone's not engaged in what they're building, or they were going to school for it and they built just what is there, right? So it's like they're just building what the class is requiring of them. And I think it's really important to really love what you do. And if you don't see it in their work, or they're just not going that extra mile, it's not there, right? The next thing I would say is presentation, and that goes into like things like thumbnails and how your composition is, lighting, and storytelling. A thing that I actually will flag people on really fast is scale understanding. And I've said this a lot in other streams as well, but if your scale is like all over the place, like if cups look weird on the table and then the chair barely fits under the table or just doesn't look the right size to the table, you're going through the process of creating content without thinking about the content. You're just trying to make it look good. But part of making it look good is the reality that it all has to kind of look like it's in the same world. It needs to come together, and actually the scale shouldn't distract you. The scale should be accurate to the point where you're not thinking about it, right? And if something is really big, then it really emphasizes the scale of that, because everything else you're familiar with in scale, and you're like, whoa, that thing's like crazy big. But if everything's kind of all over the place, you will start to notice that you're not even noticing the big thing. You're just caught on the fact that a chair won't get pushed under the table it's supposed to get pushed under because it's too big. It's a very common issue that I even see in portfolios of professionals today. So it's something to just keep in mind. And of course, there's gameplay scale, which gets kind of weird, right? Doorways being like 3 meters wide so that 2 players can pass through. There's that thing. But you don't hold scale accountable in portfolio pieces where it was for a game, right? That stuff shipped. It got checked off by an entire team in production. It's just, yeah, don't worry about that stuff. See, dude, Martin, that's a great example. So you're talking like you see fantasy environments where some insanely huge trees or huge buildings. See, like I remember liking fantasy art quite a bit. And then I remember when I started to notice that not all people were building fantasy art because they wanted to build fantasy art. Some people build fantasy art because it's easier. From like, you'll hear professionals say it's easier, right? And when I say it's easier, it means that you're allowed to do things like skew the scale and make stuff bigger or smaller and play around with that. But a really good fantasy scene, very stylized stuff, has a consistent rule set to the reason why things are scaled the way they are. So it's not actually easier. And you'll actually notice there's a lot more mistakes when it comes to like when you look at stylized artwork, where the scale is off, but it's off not by design. It's off because they felt that they didn't need to make it correct. Does that make sense to people in chat? Because I don't want to say that stylized art is easy. It's its own set of problems that need to be solved. But yeah, so I really like composition. There's something about thumbnails and the way that they're formatted. Hey Jasmine, how you doing? Good to see you. So thumbnails in portfolios are really important, right? And I always talk about consistency and making sure. What do I have on the side here? Yeah. So like this ZBrush sculpts text, maybe this should be a little bit higher so it aligns with the division logo. But just to give you an idea of like trying to keep that consistency is really important for your thumbnails, because I talked about this in a stream I don't know how long ago, but thumbnails are important in the way that they're not just a thumbnail of your piece, right? Every one of us is a brand. At the end of the day, every single one of us is a brand, and that brand name is either our made-up username or our real name. And your thumbnails are an opportunity to further develop that brand. And you'll see it in some Moshi, nice. You'll see that in some portfolios where it's very clear that they have a specific look they go for in every single one of their thumbnails. But yeah, so it's really important to know that you can push that unified look through all of your thumbnails while having different scenes. Oh, Melissa, you're totally right on the stylized art. Just go back to that for a second. It feels like you have to understand shapes super well in order to make stylized art. Viral. So the other thing that I really like to harp on is storytelling. And I think storytelling is one of the ways it's another way to see how you creatively solve trying to portray a story or tell something. See, telling story. But through propping, like you're not allowed to do text in that sense, right? You have to portray it in the image. And I think that's a whole other set of skills that's really nice to see. And when you see a scene that has no story to it, it becomes a technical scene. And then when it becomes a technical scene, the scale becomes even more important. And then you're really looking at just the scale and the execution of the content, like the quality at which you're creating this content. I'm also a big fan. You'll see me in Discord always asking for render buffers. Like I want to see what your albedo only looks like and your roughness and where your metalness pass looks like. Because I want to see when I see an issue in the way your materials are lighting, or I want to see those passes so I can begin to understand and debug what the problem is that I'm seeing and make sure it's not your albedo. Like the easy stuff, make sure it's not your albedo, make sure it's not your how your normals are rendering, or how your roughness is set up. Ben, I did laugh at you yesterday. Because when you asked me to see the wires and the buffers, so I wasn't laughing at the buffers. Jasmine was vertex painting, and I'm looking at the GIFs and the videos of the vertex painting, and it was super clear that you were asking because you wanted to see how dense the wireframe was. That's why I was laughing, Ben. So the other thing that I started touching on a little bit more lately is flexibility. So when you're looking at someone's portfolio, I know we all like to talk about specializing, especially if you're going into AAA. You got to specialize, right? You got to go, I'm going to be just an environment artist or a level artist. Those are essentially the same thing, just so for anyone wondering. hides a dense vertex painted mesh. But flexibility is showing that you can do other things other than just a sci-fi hallway. Like if you do a sci-fi hallway, that's cool. That's fine. If you do 5 sci-fi hallways, you've now diminished the interest of your sci-fi hallways. You know what I mean? Do like a sci-fi hallway. Show me what it looks like. If you like sci-fi, do a lunar surface in a base, like in the distance, or like some radio station on the moon. That type of stuff. You wanna diversify into jungles, but you still want to do sci-fi? Put a jungle on a moon or on Mars, where it has to be in a contained space, but inside it's like a jungle ecosystem. You know what I mean? It's being creative while still showing the flexibility. Like I can do foliage, even though I like sci-fi, and I can make rocks. I can, it's showing that flexibility, and it's one of the reasons I like seeing artists. If sci-fi, then moon. It's seeing artists dabble in substance designer. I wouldn't say that you should sit there and have to recreate or create all of your materials in substance designer. There's huge libraries out there to do that for you if you need. But yeah, flexibility, showing that you can go the distance, that you have the capability to do other things. And so this setup here, I just kind of wanted to talk about, like when you open a piece in Artstation and you look at someone's images, like you click on, where are we at here? Let's say you click on this one, right? And when you go there, the first thing you see, let's say it's a picture, okay? Not a video, it's a picture. And then there's a video down here. And then there's a picture, and maybe there's some like prop breakdown stuff here. If you have video is going to be usually more engaging than just a still image, especially if it's in a game or you've got particles and there's wind and stuff's moving around. Substance designer, yeah. I mean, it's more about understanding. It's not really about understanding or showing an interest in substance designer. It's more about how would you say that? It's more about showing that you understand how that stuff gets made. Hey, thanks, Bronze. 3 months, man. Awesome. But showing that you understand designer logic and that you understand what it takes in order to make materials, right? But getting back to this order of images, I usually would say that you should have the video at the top and then maybe a few shots here. I don't know if a scene should have more than 3 shots. It really depends on how big the scene is, right? If you made your own materials, a lot of people will make their materials. Let's say that this is I can't even. Can I not? Okay, I can't. Let's say that this is a material, right? Can we do? All right, that's your material ball. You ready? Let's say you're showing materials and they just, they've got 3 materials like this. I really, really suggest you just put them together in one go, right? And if you need to, I mean, maybe you have 4 materials, and in that case, you would just need to do this. Okay. Yeah, having a video gets you pulled into the scene, and maybe they don't want to see the video. They'll just scroll past it, right? And they'll just get to the images. Oh, I need to see what this message is about. Oh yeah, Sketchfab and Marmoset files. Yeah, if you're worried about people taking your work, because you can, what Miroslav's saying in chat is people can rip that from the your video memory, I think, your VRAM. There's ways to rip that content out, and then they have your stuff. It's difficult, but it's not hard to do. Just triangulate to the high heavens. That's Jim, that's a good one. But I think what you do here is try and make sure to not scroll too much. If the focus isn't really on making materials, but you did make some, if it's like a really crazy material, I would show it. But I don't think you need to show the material on its own. It can go with the props. So I really like prop breakdowns, and I think the GIF as well. So putting a GIF at the very end that shows like the steps, the process leading up to the final image is really good. But this prop view, you know, when you have like a scene and all of the props are kind of laid out and you see them all, like the entire scene's kind of broken into pieces and you can see how everything was kind of constructed, or the modular kits or any of that stuff. That's a good area to also just put the material balls in the background and just have them there present with it. I don't think you need to have entire slides that people have to scroll past to see your other work. Can you say why Marmoset seems to not be that interesting to people? I never get this because I still have to set the light. Think about composition and stuff. What do you mean, Melissa? Why Marmoset seems to be not that interesting to people? You mean in their portfolios? Or using it as a tool? Hey, Droppy, how you doing? I mean, Marmoset is an amazing baker. Someone said oh, interesting. Yeah, Marmoset's transparent materials are also really nice. Their 3D viewer is not as robust as their screenshots in the actual tool itself. Marmoset in viewers is actually pretty buggy, and it's not free like Sketchfab. Yep, that's a very good point as well. Yeah, for dioramas, it's great. It's such grumpy weather here. Are you talking about this? That's the moon, man. You ever wonder that? Is that the moon or the sun? Never thought about that, did you? But that's interesting, Melissa. We should unpack that. We should unpack that in the Discord, because there's a lot of stuff there. Oh, using Marmoset is totally fine for your portfolio pieces. I wouldn't worry about what you're using. Like, that's like saying that you shouldn't use Blender because it's not an industry standard. Yeah, use whatever you want to use in order to get the quality of the work you want, you know? So I just dragged this in here because I already had it screenshotted and all that stuff. But the about section here, put something in there, because if I get your portfolio before I get your CV or your resume or your cover letter, I'll click this to learn about you. Just remember that. If I never see your CV or your resume, which is kind of weird, but if I don't, I'll go here first. Ben's got an interesting message for you, Melissa. It says, I think it's largely because Marmoset has a very good real-time renderer, so isn't necessarily a good reflection of real-time game engine. The basic argument going something along the lines of not showing how to overcome the limitations of real-time. Yeah, I can get that. I can definitely get that. What about pure high poly stuff in portfolios? Your rock sculpt earlier high poly subdiv stuff, for example, like this. So I think once you've been in games for a while, or once you've been a developer for a while, your portfolio transforms from more of a this is what I am capable of to more of a this is a location to see what I do, uh, not only in games but for anything that like in your blog or whatever. I put this in here because it shows that I ZBrush sculpt, and instead of posting tons of these, I will just like Alex does, uh, go in here and just add to them. And I'm forgetting the person he was following. 21 minutes of Polygon's chat, by the way. But yeah, there's stuff down here that I should probably I think at this point I should probably wipe those out. Like I should do that. I should put them in my blog as like a backlog thing. Is it worth putting a collection of practice works on your portfolio, such as speed sculpts? I would save that for a blog. And if you can't do a blog here, I would do it on another site and put it in your about section. But it's funny because that's kind of what I'm doing here, right? I think it really depends. And like, how you doing? It really depends on where you're at in your career as well. Because this is more of like presentation and just showing sculpting and whatnot. Is it okay if I want to experiment with different styles to then post on my portfolio, for instance, making a stylized scene and then a realistic one? Or would it be considered like I don't really, if you're very new, if this is your first portfolio, I would be careful with the variety like that. But like, let's see what they're saying in chat here. I think when it comes purely to stylized and realistic, the one that you want to do for your career when you're just getting in should be what's in your portfolio. And the ones that you like to experiment or have fun with, you put in your blog. Now, if the quality is quite high with both, and people are like, dude, that's like, this is so good, put in your portfolio. Because, I mean, you have to be passionate as well, right? And maybe this is more of your professional layout. Maybe your blog is where you express more of the artistic side of yourself. And that again can be posted on your LinkedIn, right? So it shows you dabble in a lot of different styles and you play around with art in general. Let's see what we got here. Yes. So prop artist portfolios. I'm running low on time, but I talked to someone I work with who is pretty hardcore in props. And I asked this person like what they think, what they look for in portfolios. So I'm just gonna read some of the segments off of him, like what he had said. So he said passion as well, right? You need to be making things that inspire. You can tell that it's inspiring you, that you're interested in what you're building. Presentation's really important. Artists must be able to present their work. This is also a key to understand a candidate as an artist, like how they present their work, right? What they think is most important, what they emphasize, etc. Bad renders, lighting, and composition is a warning, as those affect how content creation is done. It doesn't really matter if you put good or bad props in a pitch black room, of course. I expect game models to be rendered in game engines, not V-Ray or others. So he would probably wonder about Marmoset. But these I grabbed because I thought they were funny. So following tutorials or only showing what you had to do in school is not a good thing. And he talks a lot of the same stuff I do with flexibility and presentation. I mean, we're talking props, right? So it's very different. Technical breakdowns. This is where I think this is what actually made me make a separate section for prop art is technical breakdowns. I'm not too interested in them other than maybe like that buffer render. And if you have like a hero prop to see how it's kind of put together in the background, right? But technical breakdowns seem to be a pretty big deal for prop art. He's like, you have a really good render. This thing looks amazing. Like, let's look at your wireframe. Let's look at your UVs. How do you utilize your UV space? So those types of things are really important to the person I was asking about prop art portfolios. Yeah, and I thought this was really interesting because I don't usually. I'm more about the feeling and the look, and I feel like this is much more like how is it put together. Like, for example, edge count is good for optimization, right? 2, 18, 24, and 36. So if you're making something round, that's like how many edge loops you can have to make something round and be able to divide it by 3 and 2 at the same time. This allows you to optimize it down when you start to make lower res versions or LODs of that asset. And then he just wanted to make sure it's super clear that 24 is a bit tricky as it goes down to 16, not 18. So it doesn't really divide in the same way. But let's see here. If UV space is used efficiently, overlapping and trims and tiles are cool. Texel density, mindset, UV islands straighten where needed, and hard edges are split on UVs. So there's a very technical look at the asset itself, right? So if you were to get an art test from this guy, he'd probably check all that stuff. So yeah, UVs. While I'm pretty relaxed on UVs, if it was for production, those UVs have to be pretty spot on. And the thing is like he was mentioning UVs being straightened where possible. So if you've got strips of UVs and they're slightly tilted, you're going to see that in your bakes. You're going to see it in the yeah. I'm pretty relaxed on UVs. But yeah, that tilts you. It tilts the UVs too, man. And apparently this guy. So the other thing to mention is while I didn't break it all down here, it's the texturing proper PBR principles, right? So you need to be able to show that you understand what it means to be in a PBR pipeline. So albedo is not too dark and not too saturated. Using metalness and roughness workflow is industry standard for the most part. That's another reason I would say Marmoset's a little odd because it's using spec gloss. But there's other things like the metalness needs to be correct. And when they say metalness needs to be correct, most of the industry, except for special cases, will keep it either metal or not. And then there's very specific shaders for when that's not the case, like car paint or satin or clear coat materials. But metalness needs to be correct. So white for metals in general, rust is black. So it's not metal, it's rust, it's black. That's how he wrote it. And normal maps should be baked correctly. So there's a very technical mindset behind the quality of props that are coming through and being displayed on your portfolio. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'll ask him if it's cool to like clean up the text here a little bit, and then post that somewhere for you guys on the on Notion. But the other thing I kind of wanted to dive into is portfolios for animators, and this nice, Melissa. You would in games, because PBR is physically based, it's not physically rendered, it's based. That 50% doesn't really make sense, right? We have to kind of fudge the values. Yeah, packing your maps is also like efficient use of your maps is really, really important. Yeah, and make sure your roughness is in the green channel. He didn't list that in here, but I bet he checks that. And the reason you want to do that is because you get an extra bit. So the portfolios for animators, before we get over to helping Paul, Artstation doesn't really support animator portfolios right now, and I was trying to figure out how you would do it. Yeah, thumbnails of pack maps are super wacky. But okay, so let's say you have your background, right? And even if you can't have like a video, an image portraying the animation in its frames would be really interesting, I think. Like a really simple one, the bouncing ball, right? But seeing like all of like the main, I don't even remember what they're called, your keyframes, and then all of the frames to blend between them. And then you have what looks like a thumbnail, right? It's not animated. It's like, okay, well, how do you deal with that? How can you make that better? And I think doing something like this could be really interesting, where you basically action pose each of like the keyframes to these shots, so you can kind of see the animation as well. Might be crazy. I don't know. I'm not an animator, but I would like to see more animators on Artstation, and until they figure out how to do that in a way that works for everyone, I think it'll continue to be like this. There's got to be a way. We just need to figure it out, right? Or rather, Artstation needs to figure it out. But I think being able to see the animations in sequences inside of the thumbnail, even though it's not animated, will give you an idea of what the animation is that you're going to click on. Then once you go in there, then you get the video, right? Then you see the videos and the video breakdowns and maybe the animated frames that were drawn that led to the actual animation. But yeah, I think where are we at here? I think this is all this is all I had. This is all I had. Do you guys have any questions before I go and talk with Paul? Make sure he's all good. That was a lot of, I feel like I was talking forever. I was talking for an hour and 3 minutes. Oh man. Hydro check. Oh, thanks, Ben. Dude, I wish I could go deeper. The thing is like, there's so much to talk about, and I could tell I was running out of time. So if you're working on a project where you need to update models, do you think that it would be worth including in the portfolio? Show a before and after result? Oh, totally. I mean, when we were talking about portfolios here, and you have the prop breakdown, right? You have GIFs, right? And I think if it's a scene, you can show the scene in its stages as you got further and further along. But I think for props, I don't think it's necessarily required. You can do it. Maybe if you showed, it doesn't even have to be animated, but show like, let's see here. Let's say for this shot, let's do it like this. You did this. And this just was the frames of the progress of the prop itself. So like, this is the block out. This is when I did like a really simple detail pass. And then this is like the final result with the textures and the bakes and all that stuff. Or like block out, high poly, baked, textured, all that. Yeah, Ben, it is quite interesting. We are converging. I totally agree with you, Ben. We are converging to a standardized way of showing work, but at the same time, you need to stand out. Embrace the show reel. Hey, man, in your where is it? In your portfolio, in your about section, there's an ability to upload a show reel. Show reels are supported in Artstation. But yeah, it is really interesting. We're really starting to come to a formatted standard. I mean, it's to the point where if someone gives me an Artstation link and it's their style, like their website that they've adapted, right? That from Artstation, that I just move their username to the end and fix the URL. Like I'll literally take the time to fix the URL and then just scroll through a portfolio that has the same layout I'm used to. Because the reality is I don't care about the layout. I care about the work that's in there. And if I can view it in the same way I view everyone's work, it becomes easier to not think about anything except the actual work. Nice particle. But yeah, where are we at here? We got 6-ish minutes. You're nervous for your review tomorrow? Oh, you're going to be fine. It's about constructive feedback, right? Anything that you can work on to make it better is not a bad thing. It's forward progression. Spaz, that's a really good question. I'll answer that one and then I will go check on Paul here. But most of your professional experience you can't show due to NDAs, security clearance. How do I handle that on resume and portfolio? The reality is you can't. Technically, you cannot show any of that stuff. And I think you should state that in your portfolio somewhere in your about section, maybe. Nice particle. But I would make sure that that's clear in your CV or your resume as well. And maybe on the on-site interview, you can show them physically with your own iPad or screen, right? So that it never leaves your computer and goes elsewhere. The reality is from what I've seen, a lot of people go against that grain and they just show it anyways, but they show it in a way where it's secured. I wouldn't advise that because there could be some repercussions, but people will make their choices. Okay, last question. I'm a new member of the Discord, joined yesterday. Welcome. I have a simple question about quantity in portfolio. Does having few but really good pieces hinder your ability to get hired? No. That's like thinking about a strong drink. So having a portfolio that's only got 4 amazing things in it is good. That's less is more as long as they're strong. Right? And if your portfolio right now is quite empty, yeah, Reed got hired on 2. But if your portfolio is quite empty, I wouldn't even be worrying about that right now. Just slam out work. Just make stuff, post it, get reactions, feedback, keep adding stuff, removing things as you go. Eventually, you'll distill it into the best piece of work you've ever created yourself.